Algebra students, we are looking at point slope form and graphs. So we are trying to look at equations of lines in point slope form and create a graph from that, or the opposite. We're going to look at a graph and come up with the point slope form of the equation for that line. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So for this problem, we're given a graph, and we're going to assume that we need to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So we need to look at the graph, and we need to determine what the slope is. So remember, all we need to calculate slope is 2 points, and we just need to label them point 1 and point 2, and then we can utilize the slope formula here. All right, so let's go ahead and look at that. So we've got 2 points in red dots here on the graph. So those 2 points are -2, 2, and 1, 4. And to calculate the slope, we're going to use the slope formula, which is here. So we need to pick point 1 and point 2 of these points. So we're going to call this, for just argument's sake, point 1, and this point 2. And we're going to substitute into the slope formula. So the y of 2 is 4, and the y of 1 is 2, then the x of 2 is 1, and the x of 1 is -2. All right, so we have an interesting situation here, and this is going to be important when we talk about point slope form. So we've got this where we have subtracting a negative, and from all the way back in 6th grade and including last year in 7th grade, we told you that when that situation occurred, it flips all the signs. So if I subtract a negative, it's the same as adding a positive. So in this case, instead of subtracting, we're actually adding. So we've got 4 minus 2 on our numerator, which is, it gives me 2, and 1 plus 2, which gives me 3 for my slope. So here, our slope is 2 over 3. So that takes care of the first step. We know m, which is the slope. Now, once we know the slope, we can pick any point to create our equation in point slope form. So here's the format that we're looking at for point slope form. So we're just going to pick a point. I don't even care what point. I'm going to pick that point right there. So we're going to use -2, 2 as our point. Now you could have picked the other point, 1, 4, and you're going to get a different equation for the line in point slope form, and that's okay. I'm going to give you both answers here. So we're just going to follow this formula. So I've got y minus my y of my point 1 that I picked. So my y of my point is 2. So we're subtracting that point. And then it equals m, which is a slope. Well, that's 2/3. We figured that out up here, times my x minus my x1, which in this case is -2, just like up here. If I subtract the -2, it's really adding 2. And this is my equation in point slope form. Now, if you had picked this as your point, then your equation is going to look a little bit different, but it actually is an equation for the same line. And I'm just going to fill in the numbers so you see what it looks like. So if you had picked 0.14 as your point 1, then y minus 4 equals 2/3 times x minus 1 would be the equation of that line in point slope form. So when given an option of writing in point slope form, you can pick either of the points that are given to you. Both answers are equally correct. Remember that, please. So I'm going to allow you to try this one yourself. So remember, I listed the things you need to do here. We need to know the slope, and then we're going to write the equation. And the general form of the equation is y minus y1. So this is the y that we leave alone. We don't touch that y. This is the one we substitute for. And we're going to take that answer, and that equals our slope, which is m, and we're going to multiply the slope times our x. Again, this is always going to stay in x. We don't substitute into that one. We only substitute where the ones are. So this is going to be the y value from one of your points, and this is going to be your x value from that same point. All right, obviously, if little Priscilla picks this point and little Leanne picks this point, then we're going to get two different answers, and that's all right. The equation in point slope form has an infinite number of answers because there's an infinite number of points on a line. All right, we're just trying to pick the easiest one for us to determine it. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause this video, and I want you to solve this problem. I'm going to add a slide at the very end of the lesson so that you can get your answers. So pause this video and work this problem out. We can also graph a line if we know its equation in point slope form. And this is actually not very complicated. So we're given an equation here that's in point slope form. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn that into a line on the graph. Now, I already graphed the graph, so you can see this is correct. But I'm going to get the points, and I'm going to draw another line above this one so you see how I got it. So this line that you see on the graph is the actual line. That is the correct answer. So let's see how I got to that point. So we know our slope is 2/3, and we know one of our points. So this is an x value right here, and this is a y value right here. So we know, remember, because of subtraction, we know it's going to be the opposite of this sign. So my x value has to be +1, and my y value has to be -2. If you don't understand why that happened, we need to talk a little bit. So make sure that you check with your teacher in academic coaching. But the point that we're going to get is always going to be the opposite of the numbers that are in this point slope form because of the subtraction that's involved. All right, so 1 and -2 is my point that's on the line. So if you go over to 1 and -2, you'll see that point is on the line. Okay, now I know that my slope is 2/3, so that means that you're going to count your rise and run, and I know that I didn't talk a whole lot about rise and run because I really don't like to use rise and run, but since we've thrown it out there, rise, in this case, our slope, number 2, is positive, and run is also positive, so that means that we're going to go upwards 2, 1, 2, and across 3, 1, 2, 3, and we wind up with a point that is right on the line there. And we can connect those two dots, and that gives us that correct line. All right, so that's how we find a line given an equation in point slope form. All right, on the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and post the answers for the prior problem. All right, so we've got a couple of things we need. We need the slope. So the slope for this problem, given that I'm given 2 points, which are 1, 6, and 3, 2, we can calculate slope by subtracting. This is my point 1 and this is my point 2. So I've got 2 minus 6 over 3 minus 1, 3 minus 1. So that gives me a slope of -4 over 2. which is -2. Then we just need one of the points. So I'm going to take 1, 6 as my point. You could have picked 3, 2, and I'm going to give you both answers depending on which one you picked. So my y and my x. So we're going to subtract our y value, which is 6, from y. And we're going to make that equal to, well, our slope is -2. And we're going to multiply that by our x and minus our x value, which in our case over here was 1. So this is our equation in point slope form for if you picked 1, 6 as your point. So now I'm going to erase some of the numbers so that you can see what it looks like with 3, 2 as the point. So our slope doesn't change. This is our y, and this is our x value. So for our y value is going to go over here, and our x value is going to go right here. So this is the equation in point slope form for the situation if you picked 3, 2 as the line. And both of those are the same exact line. The point slope has multiple possible right answers. That's the end of today's lesson. Make sure that you go to Schoology and click on the assignment and get that completed so we can get you credit for it. All right, y'all have a great day, and remember, it's always a great day to be a gladiator.